Footsteps hush along the Hart Mansion corridor. An off-screen voice, sharp, brittle, splinters the quiet. A cane strikes, one hard, echoing tap. The camera finds a bouquet in Nicholas Hart's hand. Hydrangeas, dew still clinging. Time stretches. The bouquet slips. Petals kiss polished marble, scattering color across cold stone. Nicholas freezes at the threshold. Sabrina Vale, immaculate in silk, lifts her foot in sudden fury. Eliza Hart, frail, breath shallow, knuckles white around her cane, flinches, almost buckling. Air thickens. No music. No words. Only the ragged metronome of breathing. Sabrina's eyes burn. Eliza's tremble. Nicholas finally inhales, the sound small and shattering. In a single instant, wealth, parties, and curated smiles collapse into a stark truth. Character is revealed when no one is meant to see. The flowers rest on the floor like a fallen promise. Cut to silence that weighs more than any scream. If stories of kindness, respect, and second chances speak to your heart, join us. Subscribe to Golden Tales, like this video, and share it with someone who believes love is measured by deeds, not appearances. Today's journey isn't about fortune. It's about character and the choices that define us. Ready? Press play and come closer. Before Newport learned his name, Nicholas Hart learned the price of persistence. As a boy in Providence, he watched his mother, Eliza, leave before dawn for one job and come home after another. Palms rough, voice soft. She taped scholarships to the refrigerator like small flags of hope. "Work is love made visible," she'd say, sliding a bowl of soup his way. Years later, Nicholas would stand at a pier with a prototype buoy that turned ocean current into power and feel that same sentence steady his hands. When his company finally rose, he bought a weathered mansion by the sea and restored it room by room, each cornice a quiet thank you to the woman who had lifted him. Eliza moved in with reluctance and a suitcase of simple things. 2 cardigans, a tin of peppermint candies, a folder of Nicholas's report cards. She preferred the kitchen light to chandeliers, the garden to galas. "Sea air keeps the joints honest," she joked, tapping her cane. Sabrina Vale entered like a well-timed applause, poised, luminous, at ease among donors and senators. She listened when Nicholas spoke about clean energy and asked intelligent questions, then laughed with an unstudied sparkle that seemed to loosen the tension in his shoulders. In photographs, they made sense. His quiet confidence beside her shimmering charm. People began to talk about dates, venues, foundations named after both. Clara Brooks, the house's steady compass, welcomed Sabrina with professional warmth. She'd served 3 families and knew the difference between elegance and kindness. In the first weeks, she noticed only small things. Sabrina turning framed photos of young Nicholas and Eliza a few degrees away from the main line of sight. Sabrina's fingers tightening around a champagne flute whenever conversations drifted to elder care or slowing down to be present. Nothing you could name, yet something. At breakfast, Sabrina preferred the window light and headlines about expansion. Eliza liked the corner with the teapot and a crossword. Sabrina's smile never faltered, but her sentences sometimes did around Eliza. Half compliments that landed cool. "You're so independent, Eliza. At your age, that's rare." Nicholas missed much of this. Investors required flights and early meetings. He left notes, "Back by Friday. Hydrangeas for you, Mom," and forwarded playlists Eliza loved from the old radio. Sabrina waved him off with kisses and calendars, slipping into his schedule like silk. One afternoon, Eliza reached for her pill organizer and found Tuesday's slot curiously empty. Clara checked the drawer, the tray, the pocket of Eliza's cardigan. Nothing. "Perhaps I miscounted," Eliza murmured, eyes apologizing for a mistake she didn't remember making. Later, in the hall, Sabrina closed a cabinet with a soft click, the faintest trace of cologne in the air. "So many bottles," she said lightly. "We should simplify." That evening, Nicholas called from Boston. Eliza brightened her voice. "We're perfectly fine here, darling. Focus on your big day." After she hung up, she pressed 2 peppermints into her palm and swallowed sweetness in place of the missing dose. In the dim kitchen light, Clara watched the cane's rubber tip hesitate on the tile, then land certain, careful, and a little more tired than yesterday. The house by the sea adjusted to a new rhythm. Nicholas's suitcase by the door, Sabrina's calendar on the fridge, Eliza's cane, and even metronome across the hall tiles. From a distance, everything looked curated and calm. Up close, threads began to lift. It started with the little misalignments no one thinks to measure. A reminder card from Eliza's physiotherapist disappeared from the corkboard and resurfaced days later beneath a stack of glossy gala invitations. The pill organizer turned moody. A morning dose slipped to evening, an evening dose gone entirely. When Clara labeled each compartment with large letters and a bright marker, the labels peeled away after Sabrina wiped the tray for spills. The silver bell Eliza used to call for help migrated to the far end of the sideboard, just beyond comfortable reach. Sabrina's voice flowed like perfume at dinner. She praised the chef, complimented the cut of Nicholas's suit, asked about a patent filing, and then, only then, let a gauzy thread drift toward Eliza. "How brave you are to manage stairs at your age," she said one night, smile precise, tone warm to anyone at the table who had never learned the weight of words. Eliza swallowed a comment and reached for water. Sabrina reached first, sliding the glass closer, just far enough that Eliza had to lean. Clara began to carry a small notebook in her apron. Not accusations, marks of time. 7:15 a.m., pill tray correct. 8:40 a.m., Sabrina in pantry. 9:05 a.m., pill tray different. She hated herself for the entries, for the gray suspicion they fed. She had worked in houses where the worst harm was neglect. Birthday cards not sent, gratitude not spoken. In those places, kindness still had a chair. Here she felt a draft. Nicholas missed these drafts. He was learning the dialects of investors and engineers, the angles of federal grants and ocean forecasts. He called often, asked after headaches and garden weather, promised a weekend free of meetings. Sabrina kissed the phone when he wasn't looking and then set it down like a lamp that had already served its purpose. At a Newport fundraiser, chandeliers, champagne, salt air ferreting through an open balcony, Sabrina dazzled. She floated from donor to donor with the ease of someone who'd studied an atlas of rooms and knew every exit. Eliza came for the first hour, dressed in blue, a brooch shaped like a wave. People admired her courage to attend. Sabrina nodded graciously on her behalf. When Eliza asked, softly, to go home early, Sabrina's smile did not slip. "Of course," she said. "Let me call the car." The car took 30 minutes. Eliza stood, cane steady, eyes on the door. "Traffic," Sabrina explained to anyone listening. Clara, who had come along to help, watched the hands of the clock, a low tide that would not turn. The next morning, Clara found the physiotherapist's band beneath the sofa. The day after, she found Eliza's reading glasses in the guest bathroom, a room Eliza never used. When she mentioned it, Sabrina's laugh chimed. She must have wandered in chatting to one of the florists. "They get lost in this place, don't they?" Her eyes held Clara's a beat too long. Clara looked away first. Eliza's requests grew quieter, as if volume had weight and she could no longer afford to lift it. "No need to fuss," she told Clara. Each time the bell was just beyond reach. Each time the crossword pencil went blunt and then missing. She had lived long enough to know that some troubles, when tugged, break like glass. Better to move carefully around their edges. 2 weeks later, Nicholas canceled a trip to Washington at the last minute. The forecast promised a storm. He chose to believe it referred to weather. He bought hydrangeas from the vendor Eliza liked, the ones with the sea still on them, and turned the car toward home, toward the quiet satisfaction of showing up unannounced for the 2 people who carried his name and his hope. Inside the mansion, the air held the cool of stone and old sea. He moved softly, not to surprise anyone except the surprise itself. A voice fractured the hall. Sharp, brittle, too loud for the space. He stopped at the bend where light fell in a diagonal across the marble. Sabrina stood 5 paces from Eliza, silk skirt catching a stripe of sun. Her face, unconcealed by any social mask, was a tight geography of impatience. "You are not helpless," she hissed, words dressed in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You are indulgent. Everyone pretends for you. I won't." Eliza's knuckles whitened around the cane. She did not speak. Her breath came small and fast. Sabrina's foot lifted. Not a stumble, not an accident. An ugly, efficient gesture meant to startle, to assert the topography of power in a house where she owned none of the walls. The bouquet slid from Nicholas's hand. Petals met marble with a whisper. Time did the thing it does when truth walks into a room. It slowed enough for everyone to see it. Hydrangea blue against white stone. A cane's rubber tip stuttering. Sabrina's heel hanging in air. Eliza's heartbeat, visible at her throat. "Nicholas," Sabrina breathed, foot lowering, eyes widening into a new performance. She. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Something older than anger steadied him. The sentence Eliza had pinned to every hard year. Work is love made visible. He crossed the distance between them without hurry, placed his body beside his mother's, and found her hand. It was warm and shaking. "Clara," he said, not looking away from Sabrina. The word carried down the hall like a bell. Clara was already moving. She had heard the first sharpness, had set the kettle down, had followed the draft. She arrived to a triangle of people and a field of fallen petals. "Please help my mother pack an overnight bag," Nicholas said. "We're going to the cottage by the point. Fresh air." Sabrina blinked. "Nicholas, darling, you're misunderstanding." She tripped. He lifted one hand, palm open, a quiet traffic signal. "You'll send a list," he said evenly, "of a time tomorrow to collect your things. Someone will meet you at the gate." Her mouth opened, shaped a plea, closed on calculation. "The press. The truth," he said. "Try it." For a moment no one moved. The house seemed to breathe. Beyond the windows, the Atlantic heaved and reset its surface. Sabrina swallowed something bitter and set it down in her throat like a stone. She walked away, heels measured, a metronome trying to own the tempo. Eliza exhaled, a soft, frayed sound. "The flowers are lovely," she whispered, eyes on the floor where blue bled into white. Nicholas squeezed her hand. "I should have been here sooner," he said. "You are here now," she answered, and the words made a doorway where a wall had been. He guided her forward, past the bouquet, past the fault line, into air salted with what might, in time, be called peace. News moves like weather in Newport, fast, salt-laced, turning on a rumor. By morning, the break was everywhere. Nicholas' heart called off his engagement. The words wore different coats depending on who spoke them. Irreconcilable, family complications, stress. But they all carried a question mark shaped like Sabrina Vale. At the cottage by the point, the day began in a hush. Eliza slept in the room that smelled of soap and cedar. Clara brewed tea and set out the pill tray with labels firm and bright. Nicholas stood at the window, watching the Atlantic crease and uncrease, feeling the ache of all the minutes he had not been here. Guilt arrived as a precise thing, not a fog. He could measure it. Skipped dinners, delayed calls, the soft erasures he had missed. Glasses in a room Eliza never used, a bell nudged out of reach. He did not rage. He made a list. When Eliza woke, she found him by the kettle, sleeves rolled, hair uncombed. A man who had built an empire but now practiced the humble architecture of care. He poured her tea, hands careful around the hot china. For a moment neither spoke. Then Eliza reached across the table and tapped his wrist with 2 fingers. How she summoned courage into him when he was a boy. "You are here now," she said, and the words laid a plank over the span between failure and repair. Clara hovered in the doorway, wrestling with the thing she carried. "Mr. Hart," she began, voice steadying. "I don't want to be unkind, but there were patterns. I kept notes." She held out the small notebook like a confession. Nicholas didn't flinch. "Thank you," he said. "Truth helps." Outside, gulls stitched the sky. Inside, the house inhaled. The storm had named itself. The work was visible. And in the quiet afterward, something like first light found the edges of the room. Silence can be a verdict or a stage. Sabrina chose the stage. By midweek, selective whispers hardened into statements dressed as concern. An anonymous friend told a lifestyle blog that Eliza was territorial, and that Nicholas had grown emotionally exhausted. A talk show clipped Sabrina's smile from charity galas and overlaid it with soft violins, while a commentator mused about the burden of impossible in-law standards. Screens brightened her and blurred everything else. Sabrina granted one careful interview. She did not accuse. She suggested. Words like misunderstanding, pressure, and my devotion to Nicholas and to Eliza floated like silk over a nettle fence. "A stumble," she said gently, "can look like an attack from the wrong angle." The clip trended before the truth could lace its shoes. Nicholas did not answer the phone calls that wanted outrage. He declined the panel that promised a balanced debate. In the cottage, he walked the small circumference of tangible facts. Pill counts, appointment cards, the Bell's migration marks in Clara's notes. He called his counsel, not a publicist. "We will speak," he said, "when we have evidence, not adjectives." Eliza watched it all with the patient sadness of someone who has outlived fashions in cruelty. "Noise," she said, touching the remote with 2 fingers, then setting it aside. Clara returned to the mansion with 2 staff members and permission to tidy the study. She moved deliberately, cataloging without malice. Timestamps, hallway camera caches, the intercom's auto-saved audio, the physiotherapist's texts that had gone mysteriously unanswered. Piece by small piece, a pattern began to show itself, like a tide line emerging as the water drew back. "Truth helps," Nicholas had said. Now they would make it visible. Clara began with the ordinary. Drawers, inboxes, the margins of calendars where people write what they truly intend. In Nicholas's study, she found the physiotherapist's reminder cards paper-clipped beneath a stack of gala proofs. In the mudroom, a tote bag held a travel-size cologne and a microfiber cloth that smelled faintly of alcohol, useful for wiping spills, the very kind that lift-inked labels from pill trays. None of it was a verdict. All of it drew an outline. The hallway camera facing the main stairs had been set to motion snapshots, not continuous video. Still, snapshots tell stories. On 3 different mornings, the frames caught Sabrina near the medication cabinet minutes after Clara set the tray. The timestamps matched the entries in Clara's small notebook. Then the house itself offered memory. A decorative mirror opposite the parlor arch, polished to vanity, had kept a sliver of yesterday. Scrubbing through the parlor camera for sound, Clara noticed a flutter of silk reflected in the mirror's edge and, 2 beats later, Eliza's cane jolting. Zoomed and stabilized by Nicholas's counsel, the footage revealed no faces, only a gesture. A deliberate heel lift, an old woman's flinch, and the bouquet of hydrangeas entering frame 5 seconds later. Not thunder-proof. The intercom, too, had an archive. Sabrina's voice, softened for rooms, grew sharper when she thought herself alone. "Find the bell later," one clip recorded. "She needs to stop ringing for every little thing." Nicholas listened once, jaw set, then again calmer. "Dates, times, continuity," he told counsel. "We present everything, and only what we can show." By dusk, the pattern was a line, By midnight, it was a net. When morning came, Newport still hummed with speculation. Nicholas brewed tea, set the tray by Eliza's chair, and sent a single message to his attorney. "We're ready." The meeting with counsel was brief, respectful, surgical. Dates, times, continuity. Then it was over, and what remained was not war but work. Nicholas drove Eliza home the long way, the windows cracked so the sea could speak in its old language. He carried her cardigan, the hydrangeas, and the guilt that had shrunk into something useful. Resolve. Change began with habits. Breakfast moved to the sunlit corner Eliza preferred. The pill tray sat in a shallow wooden box Clara labeled in block letters and fixed with felt pads so it would not slide. The silver bell returned to the table's center. No theatrics, only reach. Nicholas learned the timings of the day the way he had once learned tidal charts. Stretches, meds, music, a 15-minute walk when the breeze was kind. Eliza's steps evened. The tremor at her teacup lessened. She told a story she had not told in years about a winter bus route in Providence and the stranger who paid her fare. Nicholas listened the way men listen when their wealth can't buy what's being given. Quiet didn't mean retreat. With Clara, he drafted the charter for the Eliza Hart Fund, grants for respite care, training in Dignity First elder support, a hotline for domestic staff who feared retaliation. He convened nurses, social workers, and 2 housekeepers from previous employers who knew the unglamorous math of caregiving. They designed a short course, medication stewardship, boundary ethics, the psychology of dependency and pride. On the first day, Eliza sat in the back, cardigan buttoned wrong by 1, taking notes like a student who still believed effort could tilt the world. At night, Nicholas walked the halls with the patience of a lighthouse. One circuit, then another, checking locks not from fear but from stewardship. He paused at the parlor mirror that had kept a shard of yesterday and let it reflect something new. His mother asleep, a book tented on her lap, Clara setting out tomorrow's tray, the house holding steady in the weather. Work is love made visible, the saying went. In the measured rituals of that week, love showed its hands. They chose a quiet room at a Newport community center. White walls, folding chairs, soft light that made drama look out of place. Nicholas arrived with counsel, Clara, and a small stack of labeled envelopes. 2 local reporters, a nurse from the hospital board, and Sabrina's attorney sat opposite, the air formal but not hostile. Nicholas spoke first. No accusations, only sequence. Envelope 1. Appointment cards stamped and paper-clipped beneath gala proofs. Envelope 2. The intercom logs, Sabrina's voice, concise, find the bell later. Envelope 3. The stair hall snapshots, timestamps aligned with Clara's notes. Finally, the parlor footage, mirror edge stabilized, the gesture unmistakable. Heel lifted, flinch, the bouquet entering frame. Sabrina watched the screen, face taut for denial, and then, fraction by fraction, fraying. Her attorney whispered. She did not answer. A stumble, she'd said on television. In the grain of the mirror, the stumble did not exist. Nicholas kept his hands on the table. This ends here, he said, steady. No interviews, no humiliation. The house is safe. We have work to do. Silence settled, not as threat but as boundary. The reporters closed their notebooks with a care that felt like respect. Sabrina signed the separation agreement without looking up. Outside, the wind pulled salt through the hedges, and the day plain, undecorated, went on. Summer thinned to a softer light. In the garden, Eliza and Nicholas planted blue hydrangeas along the fence, a living line where the past had cracked. Clara laughed at a crooked row, then left it, imperfection as proof of hands. The Eliza Hart Fund opened its first training. 12 caregivers, a circle of chairs, mugs of tea, dignity taught as a practice, not a speech. In the parlor, the mirror kept on reflecting, and now it mostly found ordinary mercy. Moral, true wealth is the steadiness to protect the vulnerable. If this story moved you, subscribe to Golden Tales, like this video, and share it with someone who believes love is measured by deeds? Would you offer forgiveness if remorse were real, or is a boundary the truest kindness?